Homicide, 1913. The case of 32-year-old Robert Thompson Clarke. Robert Thompson Clarke was convicted of the manslaughter of Daisy Turner, 26. They had bigamously married and lived together but had separated on account of his brutality. They had married in 1905, but when Daisy Turner found out that Robert Clarke had already married in 1901 in Burnley and that his wife was still living there, she decided to leave him and determined to marry a sergeant in the border regiment who had lived in Salford. They had been living apart for some time. Robert Clarke and Daisy Turner went to see Robert Clarke's wife on the 3rd of June 1913, after which Daisy Turner wrote her a letter saying, "I want to ask you if you will let things stay as they are and not get Bob into trouble. Blood is thicker than water, you know. He had been bad, but it is never too late to mend. He has been very much upset. I ask this as a favour, and I hope I do not ask in vain. He says he will leave me alone and keep quiet." The sergeant that Daisy Turner had been going to marry said that he had met Daisy Turner in January 1913 and that they had kept company and had intended to marry, saying that Daisy Turner had written to him saying that she was putting up the banns the previous Sunday, which proved to be the day after her death. When Robert Clarke found out that Daisy Turner was going to marry someone else, he cut her throat on the 7th of June 1913. After killing her, he gave himself up and said, "I killed my wife with this penknife." He later added, "She is a hopeless case. I hope she is dead." He cut her throat under a railway arch in North Western Street. It was heard that they had met by arrangement on the 7th of June 1913. Daisy Turner did some domestic work for Robert Clarke and the child at his lodgings, and they went to a public house together, after which they walked to some railway arches. Screams were heard soon after. Daisy Turner was found on a footpath on North Western Street shortly before 11 p.m. on Saturday night with her throat cut. He had almost severed her head from her body. When she was found, she was still alive and was removed to Parker Street Hospital, but died on the way. It was heard that Robert Clarke had written a letter to his mother in New Zealand asking her to take care of the child, and following a trial it was reported that his mother was at the time voyaging from New Zealand. At the trial, Robert Clarke said that he had been strongly attached to Daisy Turner and had been in such an ungovernable passion at the time that he did not know what he was doing. He said that when they had met, Daisy Turner had told him for the first time of her approaching marriage, for which the banns of marriage were called the following day, and had threatened to separate him and their child, noting that he had previously arranged to go to New Zealand with the child. He said that, along with other things she said, aroused an ungovernable passion, and that he could not say what he did to her as he lost himself altogether. His defence stated that the evidence showed that Robert Clarke had worshipped Daisy Turner and that the crime was not premeditated. The jury returned a verdict of manslaughter without leaving the box. When the judge passed sentence, he said that the crime of manslaughter in the case was only 1 degree less than that of murder, and that the sentence must be a heavy one, and sentenced Robert Clarke to 7 years penal servitude. It was reported that when Robert Clarke heard the verdict, that he almost swooned. Robert Clarke had been an engineer and had lived in Corporation Street. Daisy Turner had also been known as Daisy Clarke and Daisy Carswell.